How many magnets do we have here? Just one?
Yeah.
Is it just one? You know, we've got other Magnette owners, but we only have one Magnette. I used to own a Magnette, 57 ZB Veritone, but we painted it monotone, black, embassy black. Sounds better than just black. And I took some time, and since the running gear is largely MGA, I put wire wheels on the front, which is just an easy changeover, but the rear axle is wider than an MGA, so I had to take the half shafts and take them to a machine shop and have them lengthened. I took 2 half shafts, they made 1. Well, actually I took 4, they made 2. And so I was able to run wire wheels on it. That looked really, really nice. Then I put in a B3 main and an overdrive gearbox, and then when my 3 kids were starting to get just a little bit bigger, we had three baby seats across the back. And I could never figure out the heater. It's the weirdest set of controls. I could never get any heat inside the car, and driving the winter was just impossible. So it finally went to a new home, and we bought a Toyota instead. That's my experience with the Magnette. But this one belongs to Keith Holdsworth. Keith has been born in England and spent a lot of time in South Africa, and now he's in Toronto, Greater Toronto area. And you've had this for how long?
About 30 years now, the second owner.
Okay, so Keith will tell you a lot about his car, and maybe between the two of us we can answer some of the questions. I was really hoping that Alan Batchelder last year, at the end of the banquet last year, Alan and John Park also from Ontario, came up and said, "Come on, let's do the sedans next year." And I said, "Okay, well, neither of them are here." You know. So John's got a nice one, but this is a corporate car, in that the body was also sold at least as a Wolseley. Was it a Riley also?
No Riley. No,
okay, just a Wolseley.
Yep.
With a Wolseley 444, which had an X-Pag engine in it. And it went nowhere fast, but in the early 50s in England, it was a family car. It didn't have to go anywhere fast, but anyway, they revved it up a little bit, literally, and put this the Austin B-Series engine in it with dual carbs, and it's a nice performing car. So tell us more about.
Good afternoon, everyone, fellow MG enthusiasts. I'm glad to be able to tell you a little bit about this car, because it's fairly original, and I'm pleased about that. It's not over-restored. It was owned by a gentleman in Toronto from new. People look at it and they say, "Oh, the steering wheel's on the wrong side." But no, it's a North American export. It was bought new in Toronto by a gentleman, and he kept it and did work on it, a little bit of body work over the years. But then he started to find there were problems getting spare parts in those days. Write a letter in longhand to Longbridge, send a money order, something gets sent back by steamship, it takes weeks and weeks and weeks. So eventually he parked the car up the back of his garage and bought a Datsun, and that was it. And then he was moving house, and this old car at the back of his garage, well, he had to do something with it. So he went to the local auto bookstore, and he was just putting the card up on the board, MG Magnette for sale. And as I walked in, I saw this, and I said, "I'll take that." So that's how I came to be the second owner, because he had a lot of other people saying, "Oh yeah, I'll buy that old car and I'll put a 427 in it," and things like that. So knowing that it was an MG, I bought it. Now, I didn't know much about Magnettes. As most of you know, it's called a sedan in North America, but actually it's a saloon car. And everyone says, "Oh, I never knew that MG made saloon cars." Well, they made quite a lot of saloon cars pre-war and post-war. Now, pre-war, there was a Morris Series E, small car. And then they started building it after the war with a little side valve engine. So MG decided to put the X-Pag engine in with a single carb, and that became the YA. and then the YA moved on to the YB, and there's even a YT here, convertible, which wasn't very popular in England at all because all the young guys wanted to buy a TD and go fast. So the YB was soldiering along, and then the TD was selling very well, and then they started to make the TF, which is a very pretty car. And at the same time, they then decided to put the X-Pag engine into this new monocoque body shell that Gerald Palmer had designed. Now, he designed what John described accurately as the Wolseley 444, which looks similar to the Magnette, but there are detailed bodywork differences. However, with the single carb X-Pag engine in a very heavy monocoque car, it was going nowhere. Not even for Wolseley. The police had them, they weren't very happy. Couldn't catch the bad guys. So then, corporately, all the big brains in Longbridge decided to put the Austin engine in a Morris. So that's originally 1200cc Austin engine, which was in an Austin pickup truck during the war, and went into the Austin A40. They moved up to 1500cc, and they put it into the MG Magnette with twin carbs, and it was a great car. Very expensive in its day. I would say, if I can remember back to those years, this would have been a bank manager's car or a well-off doctor. It was a luxury car. It was getting up towards Jaguar. And Gerald Palmer, who designed the curves, originally designed the Joet Javelin with quite different curves. And the story is that Gerald Palmer looked at the Lancia Aprilia, the 1947 Lancia Aprilia, which has some very nice compound curves, and he took his French curve drawing set and he drew up the curves for this car, originally the Wolseley 444. And then when Wolseley saw how good the Magnette was with the Austin engine, they put the Austin engine into the Wolseley. It became the Wolseley 1550. Now the police could catch the bad guys. Now that would go. So that's the sort of basis of how they came to build this rather unusual car. They built 36,000 of them. That was a fair number sold in the UK in those days at that price. Very expensive car. And then, of course, everything got a bit more corporate. BMC went on to the Farina. They still call it the Magnette, Farina, Magnette Mark III and Mark IV, and that's where Magnette faded out, in my opinion. However, coming back to this car, it's a very pleasant car to drive. I've had a 3.9 crown wheel pinion change on the final drive, so that on the freeway it'll do 60, 70, but it's a very relaxing car to drive. It's not going anywhere too fast, and it's comfortable, enjoyable to drive. And the fact that it's stayed in such good condition over these years, I'm very pleased with it, I'm very proud of it, and I'm glad that there are more and more Magnettes being restored now, because a lot of them were just old cars, they were in junkyards or whatever, and they just got crushed. And the few that have survived, well, they're becoming more popular. So that's some sort of history on this particular car. Now, technically, I know little bits about it, but that's where I pass back over to John, who knows all about the rack and pinion and the twin carbs and the size of the twin carbs.
First, the rack and pinion and the rear axle and the gearbox, it's all common with MGA. But when did the Z type become the ZB? 58?
56, 57, yeah, the switch over, yeah.
Okay, and this is an A or a B?
This is a ZB.
Because it's got the horizontal...
The chrome spear on the side makes it the ZB. The ZA has the chrome copper spear over on the front rear arch. And then your baritone is a ZB with a larger rear window cut out of the works and the chrome strip along the dividing line. And as John says, most of them were two-tone, but some came out of the factory single-tone baritones, single-color baritones.
A monotone baritone. So he uses the standard 15-inch tires you know, that an MGA does. You want to pop the bonnet open?
And also, the wheels are different than MGA. They've got a different dishing to them, so they're not transferable.
It's got a pretty good sized boot. You can put a lot of stuff in it. That's the nice thing about British sedans, is that the fenders and the wings, so forth, didn't cover so much air like American cars do. I mean, my wife has a more modern Chevrolet, and the back seat's like tiny, you know, and it's a much larger car than this, but you can't get in the back seat very comfortably. Here, you can get in the back seat more comfortably. Unbelievably, I mean, this gave way to the 11 and 1300 eventually, and that gave, or what started off as the Mini, and you can get 4 reasonably sized people inside a Mini, you know, and that's, I mean, you can get about 3 Minis inside this. So there's no tach drive off the engine, so it's common with the 1500 engines that you might find in a Leyland tractor or a Metropolitan. It also has the slave cylinder on top of the gearbox. And interestingly, the MGA twin cams have a boss up on top of the gearbox, all the twin cams do, that make them look like sort of unfinished Magnette gearboxes. I have no idea, maybe Paul knows. You know more about twin cam? No, you don't know? Okay. So anyway, so that's kind of weird. The rest of this stuff is straightforward. It's got this nice oil bath air cleaner in it, you know, like a TD, best air cleaner you can possibly get. And I'm sure it has a heater that works well if you can only figure out how it works, which I never did. I have no idea how many were in the country. Very, very few. I think I've owned 3. One of them I drug out of a old body shop down the street here about 40 years ago, and the grill was absolutely perfect, but it had no brakes. So you know where I'm going with this. And so I had a long rope and a guy with a pickup truck, and so I had it in gear, and that would slow it down. And I said, Tim, if we're coming up to a light and it changes, screw it, go through it, because I'm not going to stop. Well, of course, the light, Burton and Eastern changes color, and he stops, and so did I, but right into the back of his truck. So there went a nice grill. And I bought out a dealer in Muskegon, Michigan, oh my gosh, 30 years ago, and in amongst all the parts was a brand new Z-type fender, you know, that I sold at the summer party in '94, I think, to persons unknown. I had no idea who picked it up for 50 bucks or something. So, but it's a monocoque body, and the rust, once the rust gets into it, it's horrible. It's that's the main problem with all the Magnettes, and why they didn't survive is that the rust just got to be too much. Just like an MGB though, you can go over the floors with plywood, you know, and make it a little more sturdy, make it a little quieter. What else is there to say about the Magnette? We got all these people. We got to be able to say something about them.
The original Lucas tripod headlights and the spotlights, and there's the little control for the spotlights where you pull it out and the first one comes on, and then you turn it and pull it out and the second one comes on as well. So they're sequential. Another little trick took a while to figure out.
There's the temperature gauge works backwards from the MGB. It's electric, but it's on an MGB, for instance, when the electric temp gauge, if you disconnect it, it goes to cold, you know, and if you ground it, it goes to hot. This one, of course, works just the opposite. I don't remember about the fuel gauge. That's probably closer to an MGA type of fuel gauge. But the dash, it's all wood on the inside. It's all beautiful, and when you take it apart to do some restoration, there are all these little tiny, like number 6 slotted flathead screws. Oh my gosh, it's just, I mean, the thing is just, for anyone doing the restoration work on this, you gotta have a digital camera because you gotta take about 10,000 pictures to know where all those little screws go back in. For the British delivery, they were fitted with the trafficators on the side, and so were any other vehicles sold in England at the same time. So when you turn the turn signal, which is a trafficator like a big Healy, it's on the column, then this wing came out on the side and lit up.
It flashed as well.
Did it flash?
Some of them flashed, yeah.
Okay. If you wire them wrong to the flasher unit, then the wing comes out and does this. But it's not supposed to. It's supposed to come out and stay. And Joe Curto used to rebuild those trafficator units. If you need one, he probably still has someplace. But it's all like all of the Lucas stuff. It's all this brilliant and just wonderful British electric system, all overly complicated and little brass fittings and everything. But these wings came out, and then to let you know, it's not unlike modern cars that have all kinds of lights now on the side that light up.
Yeah, the trafficators on this year are dummies. The year before, they came out and operated just the same. So this year in the bodywork, they left them in as dummies, and they had these new miraculous flashing side lights for signal lights. And then on the baritone, there was a chrome capping over that pillar there to hide that.
So when Kimber was going through the dictionary looking for suitable names for vehicles, midget isn't unusual because at least it's a small car, but it is an M followed by a G. So then he tried to come up with some more names and couldn't find any that were suitable and had to make them up, like Magna, you know, the L-type Magna, and then you've got Magnette, and this is a name pulled up off the K-type, I think.
And the T-type people were very, very upset. The T-type and the pre-war people, oh, that's our name. How could they use it for a saloon car? Well, they did.
John, did they ever put 1800s in?
Oh, sure. Yeah, 1800 fits right in. Absolutely.
1800 gearbox.
Yep, 1800 five mains. There's plenty of room to stick a blower in it, you know. So,
and MGA discs.
And the front end you can convert to either MGA disc brakes or simply switch the whole thing over to more modern MGB, because it is basically the MGA front suspension on the inside.
I heard one story that the twin cab engine was going to be put into this originally, and then the story was that the bean counters figured no, and we'll put it into the MGA.
Haven't heard that one.
That's a legend.
Years ago, I saw a picture on the internet. Someone superimposed an MGA in front of a Magnette, and you'll notice, if you guys look, the line sweeping here, going all the way back and around, that's pretty much an MGA right there. You superimpose a picture of an MGA onto a Magnette, and that line will essentially line up.
When they're putting the Austin engines in these cars, were they putting them in Wolseley's or in ZBs?
Just this.
The same engine, the Austin engine, when it went into the Wolseley, it became the Wolseley 1550 model. They looked the same. With the XPAG engine, it was the 444. Four-cylinder. Yeah, in the Wolseley 444. And then when they put this engine in, they changed it to the Wolseley 1550, but they look very similar.
Is there any relationship between this and a Riley Pathfinder? Because the Pathfinder's a similar.
Same designer.
Competitors?
Same designer, Gerald Palmer, but the Riley Pathfinder, and there was a Wolseley 690 that looked very, very similar, but they were larger cars. So
the washer works. You press the button, it evacuates the spring-loaded diaphragm, and when you release the button, then it squirts. And if you put air pressure on it to blow it out, you'll blow the diaphragm out. I know that. There's two different inlet air manifolds. The earlier one I don't think has an MG on it, on the ZA, but the later inlet manifold, the air manifold, has got the nice MG cast into it. And this engine, this B series engine, started in about 1948, an Austin engine, but it was smaller. It was all the basic measurements were smaller. So I had a guy come in one time to the shop and he says, I'm looking for an inlet gasket, and he had the old one. I said, well, yeah, I got those. And he goes, no, you don't. And he put it down, it was like an inch shorter. The whole thing was just drawn up. And I don't know when, that one was from a 48. So I don't know when between 48 and here, it actually became the B series engine that is the engine that we knew right through the end of the MG B series. And if you want to spend 3 years of your life restoring one, it can look really, really beautiful on the inside. This looks nice, but oh my gosh, you can do the appointments on it, spend your life trying to make it nice with all the burled wood and the burled dash. Very, very pretty.